The desert stretched endlessly beneath the heavens, its baked sands reflecting waves of mirage that trembled in the shimmering light. By day, the harsh sun revealed swirling dunes of gold and bronze, and the faint shapes of vulture wings cast dancing shadows across the ground. By night, silver stars blanketed the black sky, offering only the barest illumination. The desert was both revered and feared by its people. After all, it held countless secrets, whispering of past civilizations, lost treasures, and the fierce gods who watched over creation. In this land, survival demanded an unbroken bond with the sun, whose rays brought life to crops and wards against lurking spirits. All believed that Ra, steward of the solar bark, guided daylight across the firmament, yet they did not know that even gods could be robbed of their sacred gifts by a mortal with ambition in his heart. For generations, the people offered prayers at dawn, entrusting their hopes to the rising orb that spilled gold across the horizon. Ra, enthroned in celestial splendor, accepted these tributes as he sailed his great bark across the sky. Each day, from east to west, the god's fiery brilliance shone down, nurturing the land and protecting it from eternal darkness. At sunset, he descended beneath the earth, only to return with renewed vigor at daybreak. His cycle was constant and unwavering, a drumbeat of time that gave mortals a sense of order. His name was praised endlessly, for he was the guardian of the vital force that all living beings relied upon, light. Among the dwellers of the desert, rumors began to swirl of a figure who had grown disenchanted with mortal limitation. This figure, a rogue named Maru, was not driven solely by greed for silver or gold. He was propelled forward by an obsession to control the most valuable commodity of all, Ra's rays. Maru had once been a lowly thief who prowled through tombs, plucking what trinkets he could from crumbling chambers. Yet the glimmer of ordinary jewels soon ceased to enthrall him. He yearned for something eternal and priceless. Power over daylight. Too many times had he watched caravans come and go, their travellers bowing respectfully at the dawnlight, paying their respects to an unseen deity. What if a mortal, he wondered, could wrest that gift from the gods and forge his own rule of light? Night after night, Maru sat by the glow of a lantern, pondering ancient scrolls and obscure glyphs. He learned of secret rites performed under darkened moons, of old spells whispered in hushed tones by mad sorcerers seeking to subvert the cosmic order. Gradually, he pieced together a forbidden ritual said to manipulate sunlight. The method seemed reckless at best, impossible at worst. Yet each time he doubted his ability, he thought of the scorching desert days when sweat dripped from travelers' foreheads and they cast grateful eyes to the life-giving sun. If he could harness that brilliance, that vital life spark, he would become a legend, rivaling not only mortal kings, but perhaps the gods themselves. There, beneath the star-studded sky, Maru began his preparations. The sands remained cool around him and the wind carried faint echoes of other travelers' footsteps. From a hidden pouch, he withdrew ingredients described in the forbidden scroll. The feather of a desert hawk, the scale of a lizard that had never seen the light of day, and a shard of black onyx hammered into a dagger's shape. Each item was laid out in a circular pattern. Sacrificial incense was lit, releasing a pungent spiral of smoke. With careful precision, he recited incantations in a language so old it broke upon his tongue like shards of glass. The desert itself seemed to tremble, as if aware of the offense being committed against Ra. A sudden gust nearly extinguished his flame, forcing Maru to shield it with trembling hands. Yet the forces stirring in the dark were not enough to dissuade him. As dawn approached, Maru could sense a shift in the atmosphere. It was as though a ripple had formed across the sky, distorting the golden light that would soon bloom on the horizon. When the first glimmers of dawn emerged, Maru thrust his onyx-shaped dagger upward in a bold gesture, his chant rising feverishly. He demanded that the rays of Ra heed his call, detaching themselves from their cosmic host to become his to wield. The sun rose, pale and anemic, fighting against Maru's audacity. But the lure of the stolen magic, bound by ancient incantations, began to respond, swirling around the dagger's tip in shimmering strands. For a split second, the desert was flooded with an unearthly radiance, as though all the sun's brilliance had gathered in Maru's fragile frame. Then, with a tremendous flash, the dagger locked onto something intangible, Ra's essence. High above, the sun dimmed like a lantern starved of oil. Birds took to the sky in panic, their cries echoing as distant laments. Maru stared at his blade, which now glowed faintly, as if containing a miniature star. He held daylight in his hands. Awe coiled inside him, mingling with terror. The sands around him fell into an unfamiliar twilight. With each passing moment, the golden hue drained from the sky, replaced by a dull grey gloom. Far-off watchers rubbed their eyes, confused, as day refused to fully break. Farmers, tracking the sky by habitual glances at the horizon, realized that vaporous shadows blanketed their fields. Ray's daily blessing had been partially seized, leaving the world in a half-light. Maru soon discovered that controlling captured sunlight was no simple matter. Energy pulsated through the onyx blade, scorching his fingertips and sending vibrant sparks through his veins. He kept the dagger sheathed at his side, yet it continued to burn, threatening to consume his mortal body. Whispers of an otherworldly power reached his ears, beckoning him to share dominance with the cosmic force that he had dared to cage. Alarmed, he experimented with releasing small shards of light, hurling them at nearby boulders. Where they struck, they dissolved rock into molten puddles. A reckless grin spread across Maru's face. If he could master the flow of contained sunlight, nothing would stop him. Mummies would crumble at the scorching blasts he unleashed. News of Ra's stolen brilliance travelled swiftly, carried by the Falcon messengers from temple to temple. Priests convened under dim torches, their typically proud faces etched with worry. The lesser gods and protective spirits stirred uneasily, sensing a disruption in the cosmic balance. In the great city that rose by the river's twisting banks, the pharaoh summoned scribes and wise men to decipher the cause. All signs pointed to an unknown mortal's incursion into divine territory. The queen, cloaked in linen dyed with rare safflower pigment, stared at the half-lit sky. It was unnatural. Her people had begun to panic. Some took it as an omen of Ra's displeasure. Crops would fail. The water might stagnate in the irrigation canals. Without a bold plan to restore the sun's vitality, the kingdom might delve into ruin. That evening, Pharaoh called upon Hetepheres, a revered priestess known for her devotion to Ra and her keen mind. She spoke in a gentle but firm voice, proposing a sacred ritual designed to pinpoint the location of the thief. She had studied ancient texts describing a spiritual bond between all living creatures and the sun's life-giving energy. If anyone was manipulating that energy for personal gain, a skilled priest or priestess could sense the disturbance, like ripples spreading on still water. With Pharaoh's blessing, Hetepheres prepared herself. She donned a collar of turquoise, gold, and carnelian beads, each representing a facet of divine protection. Her eyes were lined with kohl, not for vanity, but for a deeper symbolic significance. The protective eye of Horus. Lifting a sistrum, she began the incantation, calling upon Ra's name, pleading for guidance. In a trance, Hetepheres glimpsed fleeting images. A man crouched among dunes, gripping a dark blade that pulsed with stolen light. She saw lines of energy, like luminous threads, binding him to the desert sands. In those threads she sensed a convergence point, a place where the boundary between mortal land and the realm of the gods blurred. This place was said to be guarded by fearsome scorpion spirit watchers and hidden from any who lacked divine favor. Breaking from her trance, she knew what must be done. She would venture deep into the desert, guided by Ra's faint pulse, to confront the thief. Despite the pharaoh's protests about the dangers, she insisted that the severity of this crisis demanded personal intervention. With a sigh, Pharaoh consented and provided her with a small retinue of guards and supplies. At the door of the temple, the people watched her depart, their hearts heavy with a single question: could she restore the sun's rightful radiance? The journey was arduous. Under a half-lit sky, the desert's temperatures fluctuated wildly. At midday it shivered as though in the early hours of dawn, and by night the dim starlight bled into an eternal twilight that clouded the horizon. Hetepheres and her companions trod carefully over the dunes, guided by her unwavering intuition. Each night she performed a minor ritual, dipping a reed brush in water tinted with sacred dyes, painting protective symbols onto the sand. She prayed not only for safety, but for the soul of the misguided thief. Surely no mortal could hope to possess such stolen power without consequence. She feared that if Maru continued unabated, the barrier between worlds might crack, allowing malevolent spirits or chaotic forces to seep in and devour what was left of Maru, meanwhile, struggled with his new power. Although the idea of eternal glory entranced him, the burden of concentrated sunlight was a constant torment. The dagger hummed like a swarm of enraged locusts, reminding him of the cosmic might bound within. Sleep became nearly impossible, as faint radiances glowed through his tent, playing tricks on his exhausted eyes. He felt lightning course through his body whenever he tried to relax. To subdue the dagger, he performed smaller rituals, siphoning a fraction of sunlight for his own uses. Flames danced at his fingertips. Illusions took shape in the gloom, revealing images of long-dead kings or ephemeral illusions of unstoppable armies. With each conjuration, the stolen sunlight twisted and warped, seeming to resent its captivity. Yet, Maru would not relinquish what he now viewed as his destiny. If he could only find the perfect synergy, he might ascend beyond mortality. When Hetepheres finally made her move across the final stretch of dunes, she sensed she was close to her quarry. The air felt electric, charged with an energy that teased her hair and ruffled her robes. Every footstep kicked up grains of sand that clung to her sandals. The silence in that place was suffocating, as though the desert conspired to hold its breath. Then she saw him, a solitary figure perched on an outcrop of rock, the half-lit sky behind him. Even at a distance, she felt the hum of power emanating from the dagger at his waist. She offered silent thanks to Ra for guiding her here. Gathering her nerve, she climbed the rocky slope, flanked by her guards. Maru stood, turning his head with a cool, assessing gaze. In his eyes burned an unearthly spark, a reflection of the stolen rays. Hetepheres raised her hands in a gesture of peace, calling out to Maru, "Return what you have stolen, and we shall entreat the gods to show mercy." Her voice trembled slightly, despite her composure. Maru smirked, one hand drifting almost protectively to the dagger at his side. A surge of defiance rushed through him. "You ask me to give up the greatest treasure known to mortals," he spat. "I claim the power of the sun. Why should I surrender such a prize?" Sparks flickered around his fingertips as he retrieved the dagger. A faint glow seeped through the onyx, mesmerizing and terrifying in equal measure. Cloudy threads of light swirled within, a cosmic storm waiting to be unleashed. Hetepheres inhaled and began reciting a prayer, hoping to weaken the bond between sun and thief. In that vulnerable moment of tension, a sudden gust of hot wind whipped sand through the air. The guards shielded their faces, but Maru roared with laughter, flames licking around his palm. "Behold!" he cried, pointing the dagger skyward. A pillar of stolen sunlight erupted from the blade, streaking into the heavens. The stricken sun, drained of its brilliance, responded feebly. Hetepheres felt her heart twist as the world dimmed further, the gloom tightening like a noose around her. She could almost hear Ra's anguished plea, like a dying heartbeat. She knew that if Maru continued to tamper with the cosmic cycle, daylight could become a memory, forever lost to mortals. The priestess clenched her fists around her sistrum, determined to break the dagger's hold. Summoning all the faith she had cultivated over the years, Hetepheus invoked an ancient protective chant, calling upon the eye of Ra, the fierce aspect of the sun god who enacted justice upon those who threatened cosmic order. She had never attempted a spell of such magnitude, yet desperation fueled her. The words were unfamiliar and guttural, stirring the very essence of the desert sands. Her guards trembled at the might that radiated from her voice. Maru's laughter diminished, replaced by a sudden fear flickering across his features. He felt the stolen energy within the dagger shudder, as though longing to return to its rightful host. Cracks spiderwebbed across the onyx, gleaming with threads of golden light. Shocked, Maru tightened his grip, but the blade began to pulse beyond his control, the once quiet hum growing into a roar of cosmic fury. A swirling mass of fire and light surrounded the two figures, Maru struggling to maintain dominance, Hetepheus praying for Ra's forgiveness and restoration. Spirals of sand lifted around them, forming a tempest of glowing particles. Some of the floating grains burst into tiny sparks, reminiscent of stars being born or dying in an instant. The combined force of Hetepheus's devotion and Maru's stolen power collided in a radiant wave. An explosion of brilliance temporarily blinded every set of eyes in the vicinity, from the guards cowering below to the curious vultures circling above. When the light subsided, Maru lay slumped on the ground, the dagger shattered into shards. The remains of the onyx blade glowed, each fragment brimming with fractal patterns of sunlight, fragments eager to rejoin their source in the sky. Although exhausted, Hetepheus knelt beside Maru, her gaze flickering with a mix of pity and relief. She sensed that Ra's essence was returning to the heavens. Above them, the half-lit orb brightened steadily until the full force of daylight was restored, washing across the dunes in a soothing warmth that felt like a collective sigh of relief from the desert itself. For the first time in many days, a true sunrise graced the horizon. Far away, farmers breathing in the crisp morning air realized that the sky once more glowed in the pure gold of dawn. Temple priests offered prayers of gratitude. Life, it seemed, would continue. Maru stirred, groaning as he pushed himself to his knees. The aura of stolen might had vanished empty-handed, leaving behind a harsh reckoning. He blinked in the restored sunlight, as though it were too bright for his newly humbled eyes. Hetepheus gently laid a hand on his shoulder, but the guards apprehended him, shackling his hands. The rogue gazed longingly at the sky, as if lamenting the loss of what he once thought to be his birthright. Yet no sign of the dagger remained, only a scattering of shimmering black shards that soon dulled into ordinary stone, their otherworldly glow extinguished. Hetepheus felt no triumph, only a calmer sense of duty completed. The cosmic order, so precariously threatened, was mended. She inwardly thanked Ra for bestowing upon her the resilience to confront this catastrophe. As the retinue descended from the rocky outcrop, the dunes seemed friendlier in the sun's renewed warmth. Even the wind felt gentler, carrying the invigorating scent of desert blossoms. Back in the city, Pharaoh and his court rejoiced at the restored dawn, praising the gods. Festivities ensued, though tempered by the knowledge that mortal hearts could still harbor hubris powerful enough to endanger the balance of creation. Maru, stripped of his illusions, faced judgment in the grand temple. He would be shown the gravity of his theft, taught that no human design could overpower the cycle that governed life. Rumors soon spread through the desert about the day the sunlight turned pale, and a single priestess bravely reclaimed it. In hushed corners, travelers whispered about Maru's ambition, a cautionary tale about the boundary between mortals and gods. Yet for Hetepheus, the outcome was more than a lesson in cosmic balance. It was a demonstration of compassion struggling with arrogance. She prayed not just for the safe passage of the sun each day, but for the healing of every soul caught in the shadow of misguided desire. The desert was vast, and its people would continue to worship the golden orb that rose beyond the dunes. Now more than ever, they appreciated how precious each dawn light truly was. As the first morning following the theft dawned in full brilliance, caravans resumed their journeys with renewed faith. Merchants smiled at the sun's soft glow, their goods glimmering under its warmth. Children played outside the city gates, chasing one another in the dust with carefree wonder. In a quiet courtyard, Hetifers gazed upward, humbled by the delicate balance that held the world together. She could sense Ra's gratitude, a subtle warmth that pulsed through her, filling her with purpose. This time, the desert did not appear as a barren place, but as a tapestry of life waiting to unfold under the sun's blessing. Eventually, the story became part of the kingdom's collective lore, taught to novices in temple schools and recited during festival nights. People would mention how mortals might crave an impossible power, or how even a thief could unnerve a god, if only for a moment. Yet in these retellings, the cautionary ending always rang the loudest. The cosmic order is not to be tampered with, for it exists to protect creation from the chaos lying just beyond mortal sight. And so the sun continued its daily journey across the sky, shedding warmth and light upon the land. The desert returned to its familiar states, scorching midday heat and cold nights filled with constellations, forever shaped by the knowledge that once a cunning rogue dared to steal Ray's rays and came perilously close to darkening the world. But in the end, the sun's gift endured, safeguarded by those brave enough to uphold the eternal harmony.